HDL はコレステロールを体外に排出する唯一の物質です。
HDL protects against these conditions through affecting your blood vessels, protecting from plaque buildup, protecting against blood pressure, protecting against sugar. Because of that, HDL is a longevity factor because it can protect you from heart disease.
HDL helps to remove cholesterol from all the arteries, and it's improved not only cardiovascular health but also brain health, memory, and leads to longer and more happy and healthy life.
치매나 그다음에 심혈관 질환의 걱정이 없는 이런 건강한 장수를 가능하게 해주는 유일한 혈관 속의 물질이라고 볼 수 있습니다.
네, 안녕하세요. 장수인자 HDL 심포지엄에 참석하신 내외빈 여러분 반갑습니다. 저는 오늘 진행을 맡은 아나운서 이혜민입니다. 오늘 이 자리에서 열리는 장수인자 HDL 심포지엄은 Ytn 사이언스가 주최하고 레이델이 후원하는 국제 심포지엄입니다. 본 심포지엄은 장수인자 HDL의 양과 기능을 높일 수 있는 다양한 방법을 탐구하며 질병을 예방하고 개선하는 것을 목표로 하는데요. 따라서 전 세계에서 우수한 성과를 내고 있는 HDL 연구자들을 한자리에 모시고 HDL을 통한 인류의 건강과 삶의 질을 높일 수 있는 방법을 함께 모색해보고자 합니다. 그럼 오늘 심포지엄 첫 번째 세션을 시작하겠습니다. 미국 텍사스 사우스웨스턴대학교 메디컬 센터 심장학과 아난드 로하트기 교수님이 HDL과 심혈관 대사 건강이라는 주제로 발표해 주시겠습니다. 아난드 로하트기 교수님을 무대 위로 모시겠습니다.
Cardiometabolic diseases represent the leading causes of death worldwide. These include ischemic heart disease leading to heart attack, stroke, diabetes, hypertension, as well as kidney disease. As of 2015, these represented some of the leading causes of death, and they are projected to remain the leading causes of death 15 years from now in 2030. So collectively, cardiometabolic disease represents a major global burden and something that we need to address critically and emergently. What do we know about HDL? Well, we know a lot about the cholesterol levels carried by the HDL particles. We call that HDL cholesterol level, or HDL-C for short. And most risk prediction algorithms worldwide that are used in the doctor's offices to assess risk include HDL cholesterol levels, including the one that we use in the United States, the pooled cohort equation. The lower your HDL cholesterol level, the higher your future risk of heart attack and stroke. That has been demonstrated for decades now. But what else about HDL can we learn? What else is there about HDL that can better predict risk or be a target of therapy? And that's the subject of my talk today. What I would like to review for you, focusing on the HDLs, there are a number of different components that we can measure when it comes to the HDL particles. The first is the cholesterol level, the HDL-C, and I liken that to the payload, the amount of trash that's present at any given time. The HDL cholesterol levels really reflect the largest HDL particles, the ones that are yellow here to the left. If you liken the analogy to vehicles, these are like the big trucks. So the overall cholesterol payload, the trash payload, really reflects the largest trucks that are carrying the cholesterol or the trash, but not all of the vehicles carrying the cholesterol. HDLP, or the particle number, is simply the numbers of particles, the number of vehicles carrying the cholesterol payload at any given time. And HDLP equally weights all of the different sized particles. So you can see here some diversity, whether you look at the cholesterol payload or the numbers of particles, the number of vehicles, you get different kinds of information as well as the different sizes, the large trucks, the medium-sized SUVs, and the small sedans. And all of that is important. What's also important are the drivers in the vehicles. These are the proteins. Proteins confer function, and it matters what kind of drivers there are in these vehicles. The main driver for HDL is a protein called ApoA1. And unlike the LDLs, where there's one driver per vehicle, one ApoB per vehicle, HDLs have 2 to 4 drivers. 2 to 4 ApoA1s per particle, sometimes even more, upwards of 5. So there's a lot of diversity here when it comes to HDL composition. When we further look at the drivers of these vehicles, the proteins, we see something else that's unique about HDLs. If you look at the LDL particles, the one that we know a lot about causing heart disease risk, on average, beyond ApoB, there's about 20 other proteins, other drivers that can be on these particles. But HDLs have 10-fold higher numbers of proteins compared to the LDL particles. Over 250 different kinds of drivers can drive these vehicles at any given time. And if proteins are the ones that confer function, then it's natural to presume with this remarkable increased diversity in the numbers of proteins, there's a remarkable diversity in the functions that HDL has in the human body. And a large body of literature has shown that to be true. Focusing on these functions, 3 that I would like to highlight today when it comes to protection against cardiometabolic disease include cholesterol efflux, or reverse cholesterol transport. That is the ability of HDLs to remove cholesterol from the artery walls back into the circulation and out of the body. That is called RCT, or reverse cholesterol transport. It's also called cholesterol efflux. A second main function is the ability of HDLs to blunt inflammation in the right context, but to also promote inflammation in the right context, such as when fighting infection. And you're going to hear a lot more about that function later today by other speakers. And a third function I'd like to highlight is the HDL's ability to protect against oxidation. These LDL particles, once they become oxidized, that's what allows them to enter the walls of the arteries and get trapped, leading to the plaque. And HDLs can block that oxidative process. There are a number of other functions that HDL had, but these are 3 that I'd like to highlight as being very important when it comes to preventing cardiometabolic disease. Our group took on an epidemiologic investigation looking at 2 different components of HDL. The HDL cholesterol level, HDL-C, the payload, that's what we know to be a risk marker, as well as HDL particle number, or HDLP, that's the total number of vehicles carrying the cholesterol at any given time. We did this in over 15,000 research participant individuals across 4 studies in North America and in Europe. About half were women and 22% were of Black descent. And on the left 2 graphs, you see the relationship between HDL cholesterol, HDL-C, and the risk of cardiovascular disease in the red bar. These are forest plots, and you see that on the far left, as we have known from many, many decades of studies, HDL is inversely associated with the risk of heart disease. That means the higher your HDL cholesterol, the lower your risk. That means the cholesterol information in and of itself isn't the only important feature. When we flip the analysis and look at the total number of particles, HDLP, on the graphs on the right, you can see a strong inverse association. So the hazard ratio of 0.64 means the highest levels of HDLP confer a 36% reduced risk of future heart attack or stroke. Quite striking. And on the far right, that relationship is not weakened or attenuated when you account for the total cholesterol amount in the particles, suggesting that the HDLP marker has some value in predicting risk. We then went on to directly measure, our lab directly measured the HDL function called cholesterol efflux capacity. As a reminder, that's the ability to remove cholesterol from arterial wall, in this case from cells called macrophages, and to assess whether that marker, that ability to remove cholesterol, predicts risk. We did this, our lab did this in the Dallas Heart Study that's on the top of this graph. About 3,000 healthy individuals in the Dallas, United States area. And what we found was that at baseline, the highest levels of this HDL function, the more likely your HDL was to promote cholesterol efflux, that's in Q4 or quartile 4, the lower your risk for heart disease. A striking gradient as you increase the ability to elicit cholesterol efflux. We were the first to show that if you measure this in healthy individuals, you can actually predict one's risk of future heart disease. Other studies have confirmed this finding. The two in the middle are in European cohorts, EPIC, Norfolk, and Lurich. And the bottom, Guangdong, is a Chinese cohort, a high-risk cohort. And there have been many others that have shown the same relationship. And if you're interested in reading more about these studies, the citation in red in the bottom left is a meta-analysis and review of all of the studies that had been done up to that point, looking at the relationship between this marker and heart disease. So we were encouraged that what we found was confirmed by many others. But this was an association. We wanted to understand the clinical relevance. Was this clinically relevant? So with that, I'll end with the conclusions that HDLs are diverse in structure and function. HDLs have marked proteomic diversity, the kinds of drivers in the vehicles, translating into diverse functionality. Advanced markers of HDL function outperform the HDL cholesterol levels in predicting risk. These include the total number of vehicles or the particles, HDLP, the kinds of drivers, the proteins, and the direct functions. HDL directly promote insulin sensitivity and insulin secretion and can protect against diabetes. They also lower blood pressure via multiple effects on the endothelium. And manipulating this pathway can impact diabetes as well as hypertension, kidney disease, and atherosclerotic heart disease. I have a lot of people to thank and a lot of funding bodies. And with that, I'll end. 감사합니다. Here for questions. Thank you.
네, 다음으로 두 번째 세션 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 미국 미시간대학교 약학대학 안나 쉰데만 교수님이 합성 HDL 치료제 및 약물 전달체의 임상 중계라는 주제로 발표해 주시겠습니다. 안나 쉰데만 교수님을 무대 위로 모시겠습니다.
As Anat Ragati explained very well, HDL is a risk factor, LDL is a risk factor, and HDL is a positive factor with respect to cardiovascular diseases. This whole idea came from a very old study called Framingham Heart Study, when the older men in New England between the age of 50 and 70-year-old, they were studied based on the LDL levels and HDL levels, what is the risk of having heart attack and stroke. And what people found out that it's great to have a low LDL, like the lower the LDL, the less of your risk of heart attack. But if you have a low LDL but still have low HDL, you still have substantial chance of having an event. So really the best way is to have a low LDL and high HDL, and then your chance of having heart attack and stroke is the lowest. So Anat explained in great detail the variety of lipoproteins you could find in the blood, and I have a much more simple cartoon. Really, we have two types of proteins, type of particles, upper B containing particles, so bad cholesterol, and then we have upper A containing particles, so good cholesterol. We all need cholesterol. Our brain is full of cholesterol, hormones made out of cholesterol. We cannot function without it. So we produce a lot of cholesterol, our liver makes it, and we take it from the diet. And then the upper B-containing particles, they take it to peripheral tissues, and then sometimes they do get oxidized and then make plaques. But the only way to efflux it, to remove it from the arteries, is by using those small particles or HDL cholesterol. There are many drugs on the market, good drugs. Now they're all generics that control LDL cholesterol, such as statin, fibrates, and resins. However, there is no small molecule drug approved that could control good cholesterol, could increase good cholesterol, apart from some of the supplements and natural products like policasanol that Rydell is developing. What is HDL? So HDL is just a small nanoparticle. We make a lot of HDL every day. It's made, in its form, it's made with one protein, apolipoprotein A1. You see two of those proteins holding together a little piece of lipid bilayer. It's just 8 to 10 nanometer in diameter. So in Anand's slides, he called it pre-beta HDL, the smallest type, the one in the red. And why is HDL is important? So as Anand showed to you, if you look at the lipoproteins and different particles that circulates in your blood, they come in different sizes. There are some large exosome or VLDL. There are some medium size, like LDL, it's about 20 nanometer. And then there are some tiny, 8 to 10 nanometers of HDL. And why do we need those lipoproteins? It's because the oil and water don't mix. And yet we need a lot of oily substances to be carried around in the body. And the smallest particles have the largest surface area. This is a good problem in mathematics for your Korean students. You could, children, you could make them calculate the surface area. I know Korea is very strong in math education, so it could be elementary school problem. So, and because of that, there are lots of things binds to the surface of those small particles, so HDL. Indeed, there is this review by my collaborator Alan Ramali that measures all the molecules that are bound to the HDL. There are bile acids, there are signaling lipids, small RNA, vitamins, hormones. All of those molecules are carried around by the lipoprotein. So I always make this joke that this is how HDL really looks like. It's not about what is in the truck, but all the people and substances that are carried around by the truck. And now there are no approved drugs. There are about 1.4 million hospitalizations and 250,000 of deaths in the United States. There are billions of dollars spent in sepsis care, and it's really a wonderful opportunity to use that product for treatment of severe infections and cytokine storm. When I started this work, I was approached by this wonderful gentleman, Ted Standiford. So Ted is emergency medicine physician, pulmonary care. So he actually treats the patients who have pneumonia. And this is his study. It's about 240 patients in total. And he separated them in different groups. So they all go in intensive care units. They all have, some of them have sepsis, some of them don't have sepsis. So he put them into 3 groups. So people who have sepsis and pass away, people who have sepsis and survived, and then control who don't have sepsis. And what he found that the people who did die, their HDL level at the first day of admission to intensive care is very low. 14 milligram per deciliter. And the control is not that healthy, about 36. But people who stay in the intensive care and did make it, over the 2 weeks in the intensive care, their HDL level increased. So what does it mean? HDL is it's a biomarker of the disease, but also clearly that if the people getting better, the HDL level increases. So with that, I said, let's try to do it, and let's try to infuse HDL for treatment of sepsis in animals. And which HDL to use, we decided to make an HDL that had been in people before in clinical trial. It was called ETC 642. It's a peptide, ApoA1 mimetic, and I could use it with the lipids to make this little disc. And there is a picture of the disc. You could see very tiny particles, very homogeneous and 10 nanometer in size. And that is the previous data from patients. So based on this data, I know how much cholesterol is get mobilized if you infuse this HDL at a certain dose and how long it lasts. And this is another collaborator of mine from University of Kentucky, Shan-An Lee. So he has a model. You take the mice, you puncture their gut, you give them sepsis, and in order to see efficacy, you have to have a lot of mice. So here, in each of the group, you have about 20 mice. And if you don't give any treatment, 50% of them die. This is how the model works. And in this case, really 50% of them do die in the black. And if we give one infusion of HDL, we have this substantial increase in the survival. And then if we draw the blood, we could measure cytokine level and other biomarkers. So here is some of those biomarkers. So in a normal mouse, you have a cholesterol level in black, about 40. When they have sepsis, the cholesterol, HDL cholesterol drops to about 30. And with one infusion of the synthetic HDL, we actually increase HDL cholesterol substantially more, so maybe it was a bigger dose than necessary. And if you look at the body temperature, it's also very clear. The mouse, normal mouse, is happy at about 40 degrees Celsius, 38. And mice that have sepsis in blue, they're very cold. You could see the body temperature drops. And then with only one infusion of HDL, the body temperature control is much better. With this, I want to summarize. HDL is nature nanoparticles, very small size. We all have a lot of HDL in us. They had been used in over 10,000, maybe by now 20,000 patients worldwide. Next year, in January, we should know the results of the clinical study of HDL infusions. I think it's a wonderful therapy for many diseases, and it's really a longevity factor, just like the symposium reads. And it also could be used to deliver drugs and cancer vaccines. With that, I do also have a lot of people to thank and a lot of sources of funding, and this is one of the party when the COVID finally we could have parties together, so everybody are very excited to see each other, but we cannot show our smiling faces, and I need to thank all of those collaborators and all of you for your attention.
네, 두 번째 발표를 맡아주신 안나 신대만 교수님 감사합니다. 이번 시간은 일본 후쿠오카대학병원 순환기내과 요시나리 우에하라 교수님이 죽상 동맥 경화증에서의 HDL의 역할과 일본 무작위 인체 적용 시험에서 밝힌 HDL 기능에 대한 폴리코사돌의 유익한 효과라는 주제로 발표해 주시겠습니다. 교수님을 무대 위로 모시겠습니다.
Today, I'd like to talk about, first of all, role of HDL for atherosclerosis and the beneficial effect of Cuban polycosanol for HDL function in the randomized control, placebo-controlled clinical trial in Japanese healthy subjects. So it's widely known the higher LDL cholesterol level is a very high risk for the coronary heart disease. HDL cholesterol is also very important for the coronary heart disease. This is data from the Framingham study. This is a schema of the lipoprotein. Lipoprotein has a triglyceride and cholesterol ester in the core of the lipoprotein lipid complex. Phospholipids and free cholesterol cover the second layer, and the top of the surface bind to the apolipoprotein, especially in the HDL has a ApoA1 protein as a major apolipoprotein. So we usually measure the HDL cholesterol and the role of the HDL particle. So usually LDL and VLDL transport the cholesterol from the liver to the peripheral cells. It need a lot of function, such as a hormone, steroid hormone producing, and others. So cholesterol also transport to the vascular tissues to make atherosclerotic changes. We also have a cleanup system of this cholesterol accumulation. So this is a HDL, transport the cholesterol from the excess cholesterol in the tissues from peripheral tissue to the liver. So we never degrade the cholesterol anymore. So we have to discard the cholesterol to the bile, to the stool. So this is a major HDL system function. So HDL, this is a major HDL function, reverse cholesterol transport to remove the cholesterol from the vascular tissues to the liver for anti-sclerosis role. So HDL has another function, such as anti-inflammation, vasodilation, anti-apoptosis, and also for the infectious disease in the morning session. So we try to the Cuban polycosonol for the HDL to see the HDL function. So this is the main data of my presentation. 12 weeks of polycosonol supplementation has significantly increased in HDL cholesterol efflux capacity. Polycosonol supplementation is also increasing in HDL cholesterol, ApoA1 concentration, also in ApoA2 concentration. Both of the ApoA1 and ApoA2 is the protein of the it exists in the HDL surface. Both of them increasing by polycosonol supplementation. This is another factor, atherosclerotic factor, total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, triglyceride, ApoB, glucose, and high sensitive CRP. We didn't have any changing by polycosonol supplementation. So we measured some change in the HDL character. So this is measured by Professor Cho. Professor Cho's data. It's measured HDL particle size by electron microscopy. HDL2 and both HDL2 and HDL3 polycosonol supplementation significantly increase the HDL particle size. HDL is much growing by polycosonol. We also analyzed another method for the polycosonol supplementation increase cholesterol concentration in the bigger 4 subfraction, medium to largest HDL particle, but not in the small 3 particle. This data indicate that the polycosonol increasing the not all of the HDL particle, just only for the large particle. So the mechanism is unknown, but it's a bigger one is much more bigger by polycosonol. Smaller one is not so changed. So next we analyze which subject increase the HDL and HDL capacity. So we divided the 2 low and high HDL cholesterol level in the baseline HDL cholesterol level. So contrary to our expectation, higher baseline HDL baseline subject has a much more induction in the HDL efflux capacity and also in HDL cholesterol level. This is my last slide. So in conclusion, Cuban polycosonol supplementation for 12 weeks not only increase serum cholesterol level, but also elevates the HDL-mediated cholesterol efflux capacity, which is a major function of HDL. Polycosonol elevates cholesterol concentration in medium to large size of HDL, but not small HDL particle. The incidence of HDL-mediated cholesterol efflux capacity by polycosonol may have activated reverse cholesterol transport and increase HDL particle size. Cuban polycosonol may affect HDL in healthy subject and may promote longevity. Thank you for your attention.
네, 다음은 이번 심포지엄의 마지막 발표 시간입니다. 레이델연구원 조경현 연구원장님이 발표해 주시도록 하겠습니다.
So our dream is to improve the quality of life. It is possible by the HDL, enhancement of HDL quality and the quantity. So the many diseases are related with this dysfunctional HDL. So the raising HDL quality of life is possible by the raising HDL quantity and quality. In our human bloodstream, there is the LDL and the HDL. But the reducing LDL and the enhancing HDL is for the healthy longevity solution. So cholesterol is essential component, but we hate cholesterol. Just although this cholesterol is not guilty, but we have been hating the cholesterol because the cholesterol is accumulated in the human blood vessel, so can make narrow, so then make the hypertension. The more the blood pressure is growing up. So when the LDL is synthesized, carry the cholesterol from the liver and to the peripheral cells. This is the essential pathway how cell grow up, and the cell is necessary, always in cholesterol. So the LDL is not guilty, but sometimes this LDL can be oxidized, and this oxidized LDL can make the atherosclerotic plaque. So ox-LDL is guilty. because the oxidized LDL is accumulated in the plaque. So in the brain side and the heart side, so many diseases are initiated. But the HDL cholesterol can clean up the plaque from the cholesterol in here, and then to excrete in the liver for the lowering the blood cholesterol. So the lumen of the blood vessel can be widened, and then the blood pressure was lower. So the HDL functionality is more important than the HDL quantity. So I have been doing the 32 years of the HDL research, and then my dream was to find a new drug agent. So we treated this polycosanol to the Alzheimer model mouse in here. So the 4 weeks consumption of polycosanol, and then the behavior test after the 4 months the polycosanol consumption. So we found that the passive avoidance test, the polycosanol, the treated one, showed the more the avoidance, the attenuation, because the mouse like to enter the dark side, but there is electric shock. The next day, the mouse can remember that there is electric shock, so this mouse cannot enter easily. But the Alzheimer model showed the attenuation, just go. So this is the Alzheimer, but the polycosanol consumption can make more attenuation, latency time. So that makes the memory was enhanced, improved by the polycosanol consumption. So the brain side, the hippocampus and the cortex also showed this polycosanol consumption can make the removal of the amyloid beta in here. Compare with the placebo. So the amyloid beta aggregation was removed by the polycosanol consumption. Then makes the linked with the increase of latency time to enhance the memory against the bad memory, bad experience. And then I did in the clinical study with the Korean population, healthy Korean participant. But we need the healthy Japanese, the clinical study with the Professor Uehara, with the Japanese product of the Leidel polycosanol. And then we monitored about the 12 weeks consumption after one poster month. So the total 16 weeks monitoring after the 12 weeks consumption of the polycosanol. So the placebo controlled and randomized the double-blind study. And we found that the blood pressure was also decreased after the 4 weeks consumption in here, and then the glycated hemoglobin is significantly decreased in here after 4 weeks. So this is related with the diabetic condition was improved. And then the liver hepatic function, the AST and the ALT was reduced in the polycosanol group. And the gamma GTP was also significantly decreased in here, although both groups had the amount of the alcohol consumption, about 10 grams per day. But the significantly reduced the gamma GTP in polycosanol group. And the alkaline phosphatase is also significantly decreased. This data shows the somewhat enhancement of the hepatic function is possible by the polycosanol consumption. The 12 weeks the consumption is enough to recover the hepatic function. And then the blood urea nitrogen and the uric acid is also decreased in the 16 weeks, the 12 weeks consumption and after 4 weeks. And then with the summary of this clinical study, the 12 weeks consumption can cause the glycation was inhibited and hepatic function was enhanced. And the LDL oxidation was reduced and the HDL quantity and the quality is increased. To result, the finally improvement of blood pressure and the dyslipidemia. So policosanol was published in Cuba in the 30 years ago in here, and then I met 9 years ago in here, the 2014. So, and then the encapsulation of the policosanol into HDL can make possible of the many in vitro studies and the functionality to test. So we found that the last 9 years, the many animal tests and human tests, the HDL quantity and the quality was increased. So now we found that from the dyslipidemia and the hypertension and inflammation was improved by the policosanol. And the infection of the COVID-19, as the morning session, the HDL can kill the coronavirus, the SARS coronavirus, and the blood pressure was improved, and the reproduction system can be improved. And now the ongoing clinical research in the 2 big hospitals in the Seoul and Incheon in Korea. So we testing now the mild cognitive impairment or dementia can be improved by the Leydel policosanol. So in summary of my talk is the longevity factor HDL, as the Leydel policosanol can raise HDL quantity and quality, and enhancement of HDL associated with many organs, with the liver, kidney, ovary, and testes. And the blood pressure lowering improved in Korean study and the Japanese study. So my last message is let's remember HDL for healthy longevity. Thank you very much.
네, 조경현 연구원장님 발표 감사합니다. 지금 우리가 살고 있는 고령화 사회에서 가장 큰 화두는 바로 건강입니다. 오늘 이 자리가 건강한 삶을 바라는 모든 분들께 도움이 되는 시간이었길 바라면서 이제 자리를 정리해 볼까 합니다. 감사합니다.